All right, Senate Committee on Energy and Environment is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairman McCann. Senator Singh. Senator Baer. Senator Shink. Senator Hertel. Senator Camilleri. Senator Chang. Senator Polhinky. Senator Lowers. Senator Demus. Senator Outman. Senator Hauk. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, you have 12 members present. There is a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the March 4th, 2026 committee meeting minutes made by Vice Chair Singh. Without objection, the minutes are adopted. I'll make a motion to excuse the absent members. Hearing no objection, absent members are excused. We have heard testimony on Senate Bills 731 and 732 at our February 19th meeting. There are substitutes for both the bills. And if you've had a chance to review those, I'd ask members if they have any additional questions at this time. Senator Shink, would you like to explain the substitutes at all?
The substitutes for each bill would specify that the prohibition on a utility being considered an aggregator and the prohibition of utility ownership of a behind-the-meter electric generator would be specific to investor-owned utilities. This is intended to allow municipal programs such as Ann Arbor's pilot VPP program to continue.
Thank you so much. Seeing no questions, are there cards? I don't believe we have any additional public testimony.
There are a few cards for both 731 and 732. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bills, Winston Fahili from DTE Energy. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bills, David Stevenson from the Mackinac Center. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bills, Mike O'Brien from Indiana Michigan Power Company. And not wishing to speak, supporting the bills, Tim Minotis from the Sierra Club.
Thank you very much. No further testimony. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the S1 version of Senate Bill 731. This is to adopt the sub. Motion made by Senator Baer. And will the clerk please call the question on adopting the sub?
Chairman McCann.
Yes.
Senator Singh. Senator Baer. Senator Shink.
Yes.
Senator Hertel. Senator Camilleri. Senator Chang. Senator Polhinky. Senator Lowers. Senator Demus. Senator Outman. Senator Hauk. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeas and 0 nays. The substitute is adopted.
Thank you very much. I'll now entertain a motion to report the S1 version of Senate Bill 731 to the floor with the recommendation that the bill then pass. Motion made by Senator Shink. Will the clerk please call the question?
Chairman McCann.
Yes.
Senator Singh. Senator Baer. Senator Shink.
Yes.
Senator Hertel. Senator Camilleri. Senator Chang. Senator Polhinky. Senator Lowers. Senator Demus. Senator Outman. Senator Hauk. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, there are 8 yeas and 5 nays. The bill is reported.
Thank you very much. I'll now entertain a motion to adopt the S1 version of the Senate Bill 732. Motion made by Senator Shink. And clerk will please take the roll on the adoption of the sub.
Chairman McCann.
Yes.
Senator Singh. Senator Baer. Senator Shink.
Yes.
Senator Hertel. Senator Camilleri. Senator Chang. Senator Polhinky. Senator Lowers. Senator Demus. Senator Outman. Senator Hauk. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 yeas and 0 nays. The substitute is adopted.
All right, thank you very much. Now I'll entertain a motion to report the S1 version of Senate Bill 732 to the floor with the recommendation that the bill then pass. Motion made by Senator Baer. Will the clerk please call the question?
Chairman McCann.
Yes.
Senator Singh. Senator Baer. Senator Shink.
Yes.
Senator Hertel. Senator Camilleri. Senator Chang. Senator Polhinky. Senator Lowers. Senator Demus. Senator Outman. Senator Hauk. Senator Bellino. Mr. Chairman, there are 8 yeas and 5 nays. The bill is reported.
All right, members, thank you very much. That's all the voting that we have planned for today. but we do have some guests here for a continued discussion of how federal decisions are impacting Michigan energy costs. And what we'll start off with is some further testimony, and I'm pleased to have a couple folks here today and one on virtual. Up first, I have Mark Kaiser, Director of External Affairs for the Central Region of the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, MISO. And I believe you're being joined on Zoom by Mason Bleem, who is the Regional Director of State Regulatory Affairs for the Central Region of MISO. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we thank you very much for being here today and virtually. And I'll hand the floor over to you for your testimony. Thank you very much when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairman McCann and members of the committee. My name is Mark Kaiser. I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Central Region for the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, or MISO, as we say. We also accept MISO, in Carmel, Indiana. I've been with MISO for almost 20 years in various roles related to how we operate the grid reliably and efficiently, and how we plan the future transmission grid. I appreciate the opportunity to give MISO's perspective today, and for me personally, I'm very happy to get a chance to be back in Michigan. I grew up down the road a bit in Jackson, and look forward to watching my alma mater follow through on their #1 seed in the next few weeks. I do have a few slides that I brought with me that I'd like to briefly share with you. Because we're a large regional organization that's distant from Michigan, we often appreciate showing a map of the MISO footprint. So 15 states plus the Canadian province of Manitoba, where we are helping to provide reliability to the end-use consumer. You can see there that we're serving about 45 million end-use customers and managing almost 80,000 miles of transmission lines. You can see some of the more detailed information about the work that we do. We are focused on the generation assets and the transmission assets throughout the MISO region. A lot of people think of us as similar in function to the air traffic controller, where the air traffic controller doesn't own the planes, doesn't own the runways, doesn't book the passengers, and doesn't get much of that ticket revenue. We do that for the power grid. We make sure that the electrons are flowing from the generators that are most efficient to all of the customers and maintaining reliability while we do that. So you see on here the focus on generation, where the utilities like Consumers Energy or Detroit Edison own the generation facilities. Transmission, where companies like ITC or in other states, fully regulated utilities might own the transmission lines. And we manage the flow over those transmission lines and dispatch the generators in order to do that appropriately. Now, this slide shows a little bit of detail on the 202C orders that we've received. The Department of Energy is using the authority it has under Section 202C of the Federal Power Act to prevent certain coal and gas generating resources from retiring as planned, stating they must remain available for dispatch to ensure grid reliability. These DOE actions stem from an executive order that President Trump issued on April 8th, 2025, which, among other things, directed the DOE to prevent generating resources from retiring if DOE determined them to be critical to system reliability. Since President Trump returned to office in January 2025, first generating resource in MISO to have its planned retirement stopped by a 202C order was the Consumers Energy J.H. Campbell plant, coal-fired power plant in West Olive, Michigan. Consumers had intended to retire the plant on May 31st, 2025, but on May 23rd, DOE ordered the plant to remain available until August 21st, which is the standard 90-day duration of such orders. DOE has extended its initial order several times since then, and additional extensions are likely. On December 23rd, 2025, DOE issued orders to stop the imminent retirements of the other two plants that you see on this slide. Two coal-fired plants totaling 847 megawatts at the Northern Indiana Public Service Company. That's the R.M. Schaefer plant in Wheatfield, Indiana, and a 104 megawatt coal-fired plant at the CenterPoint Energy F.B. Cully Station in Warwick County, Indiana. The Cully and Schaefer units were both scheduled to cease operations by December 31st, 2025. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, has directed MISO to recover the costs of operating these resources, net of any payments received by them from MISO markets. These costs are to be allocated on a pro rata basis to all members of the MISO footprint in the north and central regions. So if you look at our map, the 7 or 8 states in the northern and central portions of our footprint. The details of this allocation are still working their way through the regulatory process. And I'll close my remarks by briefly describing the process of planning the basket of electric generating resources needed to serve all of the retail electric customers throughout the MISO footprint. At a starting point, state regulators, along with utilities, have this responsibility, the responsibility of ensuring resource adequacy. MISO has supported this obligation by working with our stakeholders over the years to create a capacity market construct that provides transparency and values the ability of different electric generation resources at providing energy when the grid needs it most. That's the supply side. And on the demand side, balancing that with a clear understanding of how the customers, the retail customers, value the need for capacity certainty. MISO's most recent planning resource auction, that's what we call the market construct that I'm just describing, indicated adequate resources to meet anticipated demand in the absence of the Campbell generating facility. Moving forward, MISO remains focused on reliably operating the grid using the resources our members provide while working closely with stakeholders and regulatory partners, providing visibility into system needs and sending market signals to inform long-term resource planning. Again, thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and that concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keiser. Do we want to go to your colleague by Zoom, or do we want to open up for a couple questions now? I'm fine to go to your colleague if you wish.
I don't know if he has any prepared remarks. I think it's okay to open to questions.
I see. Okay. I didn't know if you had any.
You have no prepared marks on my end.
Right. Vice Chair Lowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You just mentioned the long-term generation planning. I guess I wanted to ask you to flesh that out just a little bit more because, you know, we see the annual assessment and we know that it takes years to bring generation online. So could you tell me how that forecasting is built into that system and how we can, I guess, you know, assure our constituents that that there will be the generation needed. There's a lot of talk about it right now with the addition of data centers and those kinds of things. So people are actually, like, not nerds like us, regular people are thinking about generation capacity these days. So if you could tell us more about how you forecast that and know that we won't run short of capacity.
Right. So like I said, that obligation to manage the resource adequacy needs is a state regulatory obligation together with the utilities. So here in Michigan, for example, you all have a pretty good process where your utilities prepare integrated resource plans and work with the state commission and other parties to make sure that those plans represent future needs of the grid. And in those plans are included the when you will build, what you'll build, when you'll retire, and what you need to retire. So from MISO's perspective, Consumers Energy or DTE would need to then bring those plans in terms of connecting the resource. Each of the resources needs to go to an interconnection process with MISO to make sure that the entire grid can manage this new resource along with everything else that's on the grid. But we don't play a role in determining who decides to build what and when.
Thank you. That's helpful. From your description of MISO as the air traffic controller, do you have any input on the type of generation? And I'll get the point of my question is diversity. It seems to be, just from running a company standpoint, that we seem to be consolidating a lot of our eggs in one basket between natural gas and wind and solar. It's about all you hear about anymore. And my concern is just diversification. You know, we got things going on right now in the world that makes natural gas go up in price a great deal. We never know what's gonna happen in the future, and it seems like we used to be more diversified than the direction we're heading now. So do you have any role in that, or if not, where does that value of diversification for generation come from?
Yeah, we do play a role there. We don't play a direct role. But as I described, we've worked with our stakeholders to create a market construct that values different resources based on how much energy they have available when we need it most. So a little bit more detail on what that means. We use the word, in our jargon term, is accreditation. What is the accreditation value for a particular resource type? And MISO has set the rules together with our stakeholders for how we're going to determine how each resource type is accredited. If there are, if a multiple of the same kind of resource act in a similar fashion, then they could provide more or less availability when we need it most because they're acting similarly. So to your point about the potential future need for coordinating gas if we have more gas, or coordinating solar if we have more solar. So we do play a role by creating a accreditation rule set. And that rule set then can be used by the utilities, by the state regulators in those IRP processes to understand the relative values and to understand how values could decline as you build more of a certain asset type.
We have some more questions I'd like to ask one, which is just to confirm I appreciate your great degree of specificity in your language. What I heard you say was that prior to the first emergency order that came for the Campbell plant here in Michigan, that MISO determined adequate resources to meet the demand that was projected. Is that a correct understanding?
That's correct. So our planning resource auction, that market construct, resulted in a set of cleared resources that balanced well against the amount of customer demand we expect to see in the upcoming year.
Thank you. And then in terms of the costs, you had said that MISO will recover costs and allocate them to the MISO footprint. And so can you go a little further into that as to why those costs for, let's say, the plant in Michigan being kept open aren't allocated just to customers in the state of Michigan?
Yes, so that was included in the order. The order instructed, and the resulting FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission order, instructed at a high level how those costs should be recovered. And it indicated that they should be recovered from the different MISO utilities and customers throughout the north and central portions of the MISO footprint. So from our view, we are responsible for collecting the revenues needed from all of those customers and then providing them to consumers for, in this example, consumers or the other two impacted utilities for operations.
And so that energy, those electrons don't go beyond the footprint. Is that also correct?
So that's that is not entirely true. I'm not an electrical engineer, but they love to talk about loop flows. So it is possible that electrons from any station in Michigan or other places could go outside of the MISO footprint.
Vice Chair Singh.
Yeah, having a hard time understanding the emergency federal order that has sort of kept these plants going and every 90 days. Have any of the states in the MISO network declared emergencies for their electrical needs through their Public Service Commission or through their governor's offices? Or have you, as MISO, declared any type of emergency or during any specific days, since maybe the June 1st, 2025, have there been points in time where we did not have enough access to energy?
MISO has what we call emergency operating procedures. So when we reach certain criteria, as we get closer to the point balance, being able to balance supply and demand throughout an operating day or looking out over the next few operating days. As we get closer to that point, we have the ability to enter what we call emergency operating procedures, declare an emergency for the system. And we have done that one time, the Winter Storm Fern, if you're familiar with that, January 24th timeframe of this year.
Just one time during that period.
To my knowledge, that's correct.
Thank you. And then just trying to also understand, because, you know, when we closed the Campbell plant, that was because there was an acquisition to a natural gas plant. And so feels like our customers are paying twice, and maybe we're spreading out some of these costs to a broader MISO network. But I'm just trying to understand again, you know, how the federal government, you know, through this type of action is forcing us to buy or pay for more energy. And so can you tell me that at least on the federal level, have you seen one of this kind of consistent use of this federal process to force our customers to pay more for redundant services? Is it common to every 90 days to re-up one of these throughout the history that you've been working here?
I don't consider myself an expert on federal policy, but I do not believe that, I don't have a recollection of 202C orders being issued in the MISO footprint.
Thank you very much.
Vice Chair, Senator Bayer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. It's really interesting. I'll just say that. So I do have one question about the, I want to just quickly ask one thing and then go to my real question. Just to be clear, so we didn't really need it, but we have it, and it's coal, and it costs more, and our consumers, our people are paying for that, correct? That's all there is to the equation in the end?
I would say that the only minor correction I would say there is that MISO has been directed to allocate the costs to a broader set of customers than the ones just in Michigan.
Right, so with other states have to also get their rates increased to pay for this, not just us, which is good, I guess, for us, but not good for us or anyone else in the system. Not your fault, of course, we know that. All right, so what I really wanted to ask about, the other side of the coal and the cost is about the emissions, right? So there's a reason why we have that great plan that you referenced for moving forward to have lower cost and cleaner energy. Are you knowledgeable to compare kind of the emissions side of coal versus even natural gas, let alone really, you know, solar and things?
I would look to my colleague at Consumers Energy to respond to that. So part of those integrated resource plans that states and utilities put together would include goals or targets for emissions or some kind of accounting or recognition of the kind of emissions that the state is interested or not interested in.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I had two questions. I was reading a State Line article today that referenced, I did not know that this happened, but apparently U.S. power generators have been actually exporting electricity to Canada and Mexico, which makes me think that perhaps we don't have an electricity shortage. So I was just curious, sort of in that context, when was the last time that this Section 202C of the Federal Power Act was used to direct the continued availability of generators?
I don't think I have the understanding to know when that would have been.
Okay, but it's really rare and usually, I think, during times of war or natural disasters.
I don't recollect it in the recent past of my career with MISO as it being impacting to MISO resources.
Okay, thank you. And then I had another question, just looking at, the retirement dates last year for these three plants in the MISO region. What was the age of these three plants? And I'm wondering if you can talk about sort of, others have referenced this as well, but sort of the cost effectiveness of these plants, as well as, given their age, probably the amount of repairs that have been needed just to keep them running, when the original plan was, of course, not to keep them running. If you can talk a little bit more about the age as well as some of the repairs that might have been needed.
I don't want to jump ahead of you, but I might suspect that maybe we're going to have someone from consumers here in a moment to speak to the particular plant.
Sure, I mean, I'm
You
just
wanna-
curious, because I know, I was reading that one of the Indiana plants also, you know, similar issue, right, with age
If you
and,
wish to try to speak to it, please feel free.
Yeah, I don't have too much of an answer, so that, I don't have the age of those plants. Consumers might be able to share the age of their plant. I could follow up with the committee on the age of the other two impacted plants. In terms of costs to operate, relative costs against other things, that would be information that the utility has access to, but is not it's not the type of information that MISO has access to. We take the offers of the generators that are provided to us, but are not involved in the decisions of which generator is best to offer this way or that way, or which generator is best to be built based on all of these economic conditions that we foresee in the future.
Vice Chair Lowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a long time ago, when I worked food systems here in the cafeteria at Michigan State, I had a great manager named Boogie Bob. And Boogie Bob said, Dan, I don't want one hamburger left over. But don't you dare run out. So it seems to me that this is kind of what we're dealing with in power generation today. We will be criticized if we have one left over, but we'll be thrown out of office if we run out. So from that perspective, I guess, I want to delve just a little bit more into this accreditation process and what is involved in accreditation? Is it a value? What's that value based on? Do you ever change your accreditations? Do you raise them? Do you lower them? How do they weigh between all the different, and please know that I'm not for or against any type of generation. My biggest concern is that we don't have enough diversity. I think we should have more biomass and all kinds of things, because I worry about blackouts that almost took my business away from me back in, I think it's 2014 or something. I can't remember how far back that was, but tell me more about how the accreditation works and how you assign that value, and do you change those values based on the type of generation there is?
Yeah. So we have recently been working with stakeholders to reform our resource adequacy construct, so that we have a finer point on the accreditation value of resources. So at a very high level, because, you know, like everything gets complicated really fast when you get into the details, we value resources based on how and whether they're available when we need them most. And what that means is, Winter Storm Fern recently took place. For every season of the year, we capture the 50 to 75 hours of the most impactful hours, when we needed resources most. So in the winter season this year that we're going through right now, that should probably be Winter Storm Fern as part of those hours. So 80% of a resource's availability is based on whether they were available. Over the past 3 years, how available were they during those times? The other 20% of a resource's availability accreditation is the rest of the hours. Now, that's an individual resources accreditation. We also do a forward-looking evaluation. We run models for the next year and the next several years, and we look at how classes of resources add benefit. So you think of your solar as a class, gas as a class, nuclear as a class. And those classes can, since they can move together or have similar contingencies or fuel availability issues, we use those forward-looking projections to create a kind of a baseline. Your individual performance is part of your accreditation as a resource, and then your class-based performance, it plays the other part of your accreditation as a resource. Overall, accreditation across resource classes declined when we've moved to this, but at the same time, since it's a more reliable way of evaluating what's going to be available, we've also been able to reduce the demand expectation. We've been able to reduce what we call the planning reserve margin, how much extra we need. To your point, no burgers. We don't operate the grid that way. We'd like to have a few extra burgers because the downside risk has historically been considered worse than the upside risk.
And last question, Senator Polanki, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Senator Lauer's point, is there a lot of extra coal in Michigan we need to use up, or it's going to go to waste, or is there a bunch of coal sitting around that we should probably use in Michigan?
That question I would direct to Consumers Energy. I don't have information on that.
Question, it was touched on with Senator Singh's question, but is there an energy emergency in Michigan?
I don't have information on whether Michigan has declared an energy emergency.
But isn't that why the feds were able to step in and say that we needed to keep these coal plants open because there's an emergency?
I think that was indicated as an emergency at the federal level, not particular to Michigan.
Do you think there's an energy emergency in Michigan currently?
From our perspective, we take the resources that our utilities make available to us and we dispatch them as available. And our most recent planning resource auction did show enough resources to cover the amount of demand that we had, along with that planning reserve margin that I indicated.
So no energy emergency.
I think we'll let the answer stand there, if I may, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Keiser, sorry, and Mason Blame from Zoom. We didn't get to see you, but I think that means that we're good and set here. So thank you so much for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. All right, next up is we're joined by Sean Johnson. And if I do my count right, that's at least 3 Seans in the room. All differently spelled, by the way. Mr. Johnson? No, we all just spell them differently. Mr. Johnson, Chief Legal and Administrative Officer for Consumers Energy. We thank you for joining us this afternoon, and when you're ready, we'd be interested to hear your testimony.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman McCann. As mentioned, my name is Sean Johnson. I'm Executive Vice President with CMS and Consumers Energy. And before I jump into anything else, there's one piece of the MISO testimony that I must vehemently protest, and that is that the #1 seed will win, and the #3 seed will win, so go green. CMS is the parent company of Consumers Energy, which is the company that you are probably all familiar with. And you may be asking why the Chief Legal Officer from CMS and Consumers is testifying about the operation of a coal plant, which is a fair question. But in addition to being the Chief Legal Officer, I also oversee several other of the corporate functions within Consumers Energy, including rates and regulatory compliance, and most importantly, probably for this, HR. And when you think about the different intersections of issues that come up with running a coal plant, when you're requested to keep it running 7 days or 8 days before you're going to close it, there's a lot of customer rate impacts, a lot of workforce impacts. And so I've been privileged to be the executive at Consumers in charge of ensuring compliance and making sure that we can keep safe operations at Campbell since receiving the order. So before jumping into Campbell, I guess I would like to back up in a little bit, just talk a little bit about Consumers Energy. And anytime I do that, I start with the 8,200 amazing coworkers at the company that wake up every morning with the heart of service for our customers. And I think that's been demonstrated over the last week or so as we've dealt with some very severe wind on the west side starting Friday, then moving to up north with ice, then snow, then ice again. And I know many of your constituents have been braving that weather and the bad roads and power outages. And we've been working very hard and we'll continue to work until we get the last person on. As of this morning, we were at about 16,000 customers left, and we will continue to work to restore. But I just think that shows the commitment to service and the commitment to our customers that our coworkers have. We own a vast electric and gas system across every county in the state, in the Lower Peninsula. We own just over 110,000 miles of electric lines and just over 30,000 miles of gas lines. We also own between power plants, renewable facilities, and battery facilities, 29 of those facilities throughout the state. So that ownership means that we are one of the largest landowners in the state and one of the largest taxpayers. We pay over $725 million a year in state and local taxes. And we are also the second largest investor in Michigan. And those investments are made to secure the grid for today and for the future so that when we have weather events like we've had, we can make sure that the grid is hard and we don't have as many outages. And those investments really drive spending with suppliers, contractors, businesses all throughout the state, driving Michigan's economy. So when you think about our business, I really think about it in three segments. We have gas distribution, that's the pipes delivering gas molecules to homes and businesses for heat. We have electric distribution, which is the wires that I talked about, the 110,000 miles of wires delivering the electrons to businesses and homes. And then most relevant for today, we have the electric supply business, and that's those 29 power plants. And that is the production or the purchase of those electrons to serve businesses and homes. And we get that through our power plants that I mentioned, and also through what our industry has tons of acronyms and things, words we throw around. We call them PPAs, power purchase agreements. We don't own all of our supply. We also buy from the market, buy from other folks. Now, I mentioned that there's a lot of terms we throw around. When we talk about supply, there's really three terms that I would like to talk about before jumping into the Campbell here. Energy, capacity, and resource adequacy. Energy is just the volume of electrons that we've produced. It's measured in kilowatt hours. It's the electricity that flows through the meter. That's what people are paying for. Capacity, think of that as the maximum amount one of these power plants can produce at any one given time. It's the capacity to generate energy. And people throw around or talk about different examples to try to make this more understandable outside of the utility industry. And just a couple weeks ago, I actually heard one that resonated with me. It may not with the committee, but if you think of a truck's towing capacity, an F-150 has 6-ton towing capacity. It can tow 12,000 pounds. That's its capacity. Most of the time, most folks are pulling a residential trailer with a lawnmower on it. That's probably 2,000 pounds. That's 1 ton. That's your energy. That's it. You got capacity of 12,000, using energy of 2,000. Then you get into resource adequacy, and all that means, and you just heard from MISO, all that means is you've got enough capacity when you need it the most. So in those moments in the different seasons, when it's hottest or coldest, everyone's turning the light switch on. Everyone's running their stuff, throwing things in the microwave before you take kids to practice. There are enough different assets on the system with enough capacity to make sure that the lights never go off. And MISO has a process that they talked about to determine resource adequacy, but Michigan also has a process. And there's 2 different things that utilities have to do to demonstrate resource adequacy. First is a state reliability mechanism, and this came out of the 2016 energy law. Every year we have to prove through the Michigan Public Service Commission that we have enough capacity in the current year and 3 more years to serve our customers. We have to do that every year. Then every 5 years, and again, this came out of the 2016 energy law, we have to file what's called an integrated resource plan. You'll hear us say IRP all the time. And what an IRP is we look at the next 20 years. We predict what our customer demand will be, and we lay out a plan for how we will serve that demand. And I can tell you, we've had 2 IRPs since the 2016 energy law, and they get participation from everyone. Each case has had over 20 parties in it, from large industrial customers to environmental stakeholders, customer advocates, and everyone in between. And you take just about a year to go through the commission process to determine what's the best plan to serve our customers over the next 20 years. And the plan only gets approved if we balance both reliability and affordability, and it has to be the most reliable and affordable plan for our customers. So, and you just probably saw press last week, we just announced we'll be filing another IRP this summer that will look at the next 20 years. And that IRP, we will be proposing to build 2 new natural gas plants, 1.5 gigawatts of natural gas plants. So I say all that before, sorry, it was a lot of context, but I'll give you some context to what's behind and where we're at leading up to the Campbell situation. Now, Campbell is in West Olive, Michigan. It's in between Grand Haven and Holland. And even though we call it the Campbell plant, it's actually 3 different units. Unit 1 was built in 1961. It's about 220 megawatts. Unit 2 was built in 1967. It's 180 megawatts. And then Unit 3 is the one that I think people usually think of when they're thinking of Campbell. Unit 3 was built in 1980, and it's 700 megawatts. That's the biggest and most efficient one of the 3 units. As part of our last integrated resource plan, which we filed in 2021 and was approved in 2022, we proposed retiring the Campbell, all 3 Campbell units. Units 1 and 2 were originally slated to retire in 2031. Unit 3, the big one, was slated to retire in 2040. And as part of that proposal, we said we could only do that if we were allowed or authorized to purchase the Covert natural gas generating facility, which is about 1,200 megawatts. At the time, Covert was selling its electricity and capacity into PJM, which is a different market than MISO. So we were proposing to bring new energy into Michigan and into the MISO market. In addition to that, we had proposed that we would build out renewables and that we would competitively bid them so that we could get the lowest price for our customers. As part of that process, it was determined that that would be the most reasonable and prudent, the most affordable thing to do for our customers, because if we did that, it would result in about $600 million in savings for our customers. Even though we were retiring plants early, by bringing in the new natural gas plant, it would result in building out the renewables with competitive bid. It would result in $600 million of savings for our customers. And this plan, we actually settled. There were a few parties that contested that, but this plan was agreed to by, again, a broad range of stakeholders in the process. So we got the approval in June of 2022, and as you might imagine, a 60 to 40-year-old power plant has a lot of stuff that has to happen before you can close it down. So over the next few years, we started the process of getting ready to decommission the plant. There are about 260 employees at the plant, so part of that preparation was started to figure out where we would place these folks once the plants were retired. And then you just start doing operational and maintenance things to get the plant ready. You also stop making significant investments in it, because if you think about it, if you're going to close it soon, you don't want to dump too much more money in it. You want to maintain them so that they'll continue to run, but you're not going to make major investments. And part of the investments that we did not make were related to environmental controls, which is where part of the savings came from for our customers. If we close these, we wouldn't have to make environmental investments that our customers would pay for several years. Then on May 23rd, we received the order. The order was directed to both MISO and consumers. And that was 8 days before we were supposed to close. And the order said that we had to make the plant available and that MISO had to dispatch it economically. At the time, I just want to give a shout out, because I have a microphone, and the coworkers were amazing. Again, this commitment to service. At the time, we scrambled. We had 5 days of coal left. You get coal by train from Wyoming. We had put our rail cars in storage, and typically it takes 10 days to get a train to Wyoming to get the coal and get back. But again, our customers, or our coworkers, answered the call, did amazing work. We worked with MISO to make sure we were in compliance, went on minimum operations to burn a little bit less coal while I could get the coal there. And in 5 days, we got coal back, we got the plant running, we made sure there were safe operations, and we started to get to work on the workforce plan. And we've been operating ever since, where our number one priority there is safety. We will maintain safe operations. We are in compliance with all environmental permits and regulations, and we will continue to be so. And since then, we've received 3 more orders from the Department of Energy. Now, there's been a lot of discussion around costs to run the plant, and I would like to, if the committee will permit me, I'll get in the weeds and give you some details behind these costs and how we arrived at them, and discuss this a little bit. From May 23rd to December 31st, and this has been publicly disclosed, it would cost $135 million in excess of revenues we received from selling the power to run the plant. Now, as mentioned in the MISO testimony, the Federal Power Act and the order from the DOE provided that we could get cost recovery for these costs. And we've filed with FERC, and FERC has agreed that those costs should be spread across MISO North and Central. And that's because the order cites not an emergency in Michigan, and I want to be clear on that. We've had our SRM filings and our IRPs approved. We have demonstrated, we being consumers, every single year, we have the capacity and energy to serve our customers. However, the order cites a federal emergency or a regional emergency, not with consumers' energy. Because the emergency is not with us, we believe that it is very appropriate that the costs be spread to those other states. We have our resource adequacy, so if we're going to run this, other customers should pay for this. Now, we have filed, as I said, we have filed with FERC, and they have agreed that those costs should be spread, but we're still waiting for an order from FERC to actually give us the cost recovery. And so if I give you an example, that for the first 90-day period, and this is what we filed at FERC for cost recovery for, it was $42 million to run the plant. MISO revenue and cost savings, so the money we received for selling the energy into the market, was $72 million. And it's $73 million, and I'm gonna round here. I'm a lawyer, I'm not gonna get super detailed on the numbers, but I'll round here so it may not add up totally to 42. Then you have to start adding on the costs. So the fuel, the coal that we buy from Wyoming, plus it's called reagents, chemicals you must put in with the coal to comply with environmental standards, $55 million. Next set of costs are operation and maintenance. Again, things break on these plants, we have to fix them. We have a staff of over 200 people there, so the labor costs associated with that. All of those things added up is about $11.5 million for the first 90-day period. Then you get into fixed costs, and this is where the opportunity for our customers lies. Fixed costs are, think of, we paid for the plant, we made investments to these plants over several years, but you don't charge customers for all of that investment in 1 year. You spread it out over the life of an asset. It's very similar to like a mortgage. Consumers has paid for these things, but we're not going to charge customers in 1 year. We spread it out over several years. As part of our approved IRP in 2022, that again resulted in $600 million in savings for customers, the commission authorized to continue to collect these fixed costs from our customers through 2040. Now, with the running of this plant for the benefit of other customers in other states, we have the opportunity to spread these costs to those customers. When you add up these fixed costs for that first 90-day period, it's $52 million. So when you add all of those up with the revenues, you get to a net cost of $42 million. And this is where I want to emphasize this point over and over because it can get lost, and there's several challenges to the orders. There's people challenging every part of it, and I understand that that's going to happen, but the cost recovery, the way we've proposed it and the way FERC has agreed the cost should be spread, can actually be a net benefit to our customers. It's about $15 million, it's a little over $15 million a month. So if I could have an ask of this committee, we've had the congressional bipartisan delegation has filed a letter in the FERC docket. We have challenges in the FERC docket from the Michigan Attorney General and other stakeholders. We're trying to get them to not challenge the cost recovery. Again, I will never convince them not to challenge the order, but the cost recovery can actually help our customers. When we get an order from FERC spreading these costs to other states, we will literally go to the MPSC and reduce rates. We will take these costs out of rate. So that is, I know I went through a lot of numbers, a lot of details. I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is sort of where we sit right now with the situation.
Very good. Thank you for that testimony. I know we have some questions. Let me first ask about the environmental controls, if you can speak to those. Can you elaborate further on the environmental controls that weren't made, essentially, if you follow me?
Yeah, they would have to be made in the 2030s. They're related to water intake because the water intake that we would have to do and more air controls. The regulations do not require us to do it right now, so we are still in compliance with all environmental regulations, right? But when we filed our last IRP, when you looked at the investments that would have to be made, it was not making sense to make those investments, giving the benefit that our customers would get from continuing to run the plant.
And I'm not sure this is a question for you necessarily, but if those investments aren't made, what are some of the outcomes?
I think at the time that those regulations would become effective, we would decide if we would make those investments. Under the current way we're proposing cost recovery, we would make the investments and charge those to the entire MISO North and Central.
Let me try a little differently. If the emergency order were not to be renewed, would you be resuming the shutdown of the plant and not making those environmental control investments? And that's number one. And so number two, what would be the ramifications of not making those environmental impact investments and continuing to operate the plant?
Excuse me. So for number one, yes, if the 202C orders expire, we will do an orderly ramp down of the plant and go back to our decommissioning plan. We are under order from the Michigan Public Service Commission, and we've entered into a settlement agreement with several stakeholders. So when the orders conclude, we will decommission. On your second question, it's a hypothetical, but I don't see us being in a scenario where we're ever going to operate a plant of not doing upgrades that are required by state and federal environmental regulations. That's just not going to be a scenario the company.
So maybe related to that, in terms of emissions and meeting Michigan's 2023 clean energy laws, how would the operation of the plant, was the shutting down of the plant part of the plan to comply with the 2023 energy laws?
No, it was not. It was, we had decided to shut down the plant before the 2023 energy law was passed. And it was, again, primarily an economic decision because it was the best economics for our customers. The 2023 energy law has the requirements out in 2035 and 2040. And so I don't see the operation of the plant right now impacting our ability to comply with those targets by then.
So let me reverse that. If the plant had continued to operate, would that have potentially been an issue with compliance?
I mean, potentially, again, we're in hypotheticals. We would have figured out, if our plan was to continue to run, we would have figured out a way to comply with the law. But we decided to close it before the law even became effective. So it's not the state law that's driving this.
Understandable. Senator Polanyi, I know you had a couple questions from last, so please, thank you. I know you had a couple.
Oh, yeah. So the Michigan, you were gonna close this coal plant outside of the Michigan climate. You had decided for economic reasons for your ratepayers, it would have benefited ratepayers to the tune of $600 million in savings to make this coal plant into a natural gas plant?
Not to make it into a natural gas plant, just to decommission it, close it, and we purchased a different natural gas plant essentially down the road.
Okay, but to close it, and now you're doing the best you can with this cost recovery to not make it hurt your customers, like lipstick on a pig, doing the best you can, right?
I do want to be clear, the way we've proposed cost recovery will actually benefit our customers
Yes,
right now.
that's what I mean.
Yes.
I'm complimenting you. This is good, a good thing. You're doing the best you can to, having to keep this coal plant open. Do you think there is an energy emergency in Michigan?
The only thing I can speak to is consumers' energy's resource adequacy, and there is not an emergency for us or our customers. We have demonstrated that year after year. It is our job to make sure there's adequate resources to serve our customers, and we will always make sure that there is.
I'll get to my question, but even when this federal thing is lifted, you're going to shut it down, right? I'm just trying to understand. So is there a bunch of coal laying around in West Olive, Michigan that we have to use up? That was my question I had for the other guy. You said something about we bring the coal in from Wyoming?
Yes, which is where we've purchased it for several years. The Powder River Basin in Wyoming is where we buy it.
So the coal plant, there's no coal that's going to go to waste. We actually, to keep this coal plant running, we have to go to Wyoming, pick up the coal, put it on a train and bring it back here to run this coal plant.
Correct.
Senator Chang.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for all of this information. It's really informative. Do you know when the last time this Federal Power Act Section 202C was used, and was there an actual emergency?
So I know the one before Consumers Energy received one was in Puerto Rico. I think it related to after the hurricane had hit there. And then I know of it being used several other times in Louisiana and other states, but I can't tell you the exact last time.
And if I remember correctly, there are other states who are involved in litigation related to this order. Do you know the status of any of those?
As I said, every order, there's been 4 orders, every order has been challenged by
Okay.
a litany of special interest groups and some other states. They are still, just to put in context, the first order, we're 10 months in, they're still filing briefs on that. So the challenges will take very, very long.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm just thinking one more question here and just trying to formulate it, which is, this question of the cost distribution, the cost recovery that's necessary for the continued operation of the plant being spread across the MISO footprint, across the Midwest region for lay terms. Had that not been the case, if it were just a cost allocation across your Michigan customers, do you have an estimate of what that would have cost?
The cost would be the same, so then just be spreading this 42 million for the first order across Michigan instead of across the MISO footprint.
But that's the first order. We're on the 4th order, correct?
Correct.
So is it 42, simple math, 42 times 4, or can you?
It's a little different. As I said, it's 135 million through the end of the year, but if you think about the big change each period will be how much revenue we get from selling into the market. So if you think in the, June through September timeframe when it's really hot, we will make more money. When you think of the shoulder months, March, April, May, it doesn't make as much. So you can't just sort of peanut butter spread. Each 90-day period will look a little different.
And that actually reminds me of one other just fine point I guess I want to put on this. You open with your generation in various capacities. This is electricity coming out of the Campbell plant. This is for air conditioners and home lighting. This is not for heating homes primarily in Michigan. Would you say that's correct?
Unless they're on a heat pump or something, yeah. But for the most part, yeah, it's not for heat.
But we don't think too many people are running their air conditioners in January.
Well, although again, in the winter, our peak gets pretty high because if you think of furnace fans, so we do use quite a bit of electricity as a state in the very coldest days as well.
But nothing that rises to that emergency level that was mentioned other than for the storm, for Fern.
Again, I'm only going to speak, I want to make it very clear, only for Consumers Energy. We have the resources needed to serve our customers. I can't speak to any other utility or the grid as a whole.
So appreciate that point very much. We'll leave it at that, seeing no other questions before the committee. And again, greatly appreciate your testimony here today.
Thank you
very much.